My mornings begin with the sound of the pill bottle rattling against my nightstand like dice in a cup. Those small white tablets have been my lifeline for 3 years now, the only thing standing between me and cardiac arrest. At 73, my body runs on borrowed time, and these pills keep the engine running just a little longer. The cardiologist explained it simply. Without these, Mr. Torres, your heart will simply stop working. My daughter Anna calls every single morning at 8:15 sharp, right after her first cup of coffee. "Papa, did you take your medication?" she asks, worry threading through her voice like she's talking to a forgetful child. I understand her concern. After her mother died 5 years ago, I'm all the family she has left. Well, me and that husband of hers. But lately, something feels terribly wrong. Even with the pills, my chest grows heavier each day. My breath comes in shorter gasps. My hands shake like autumn leaves, and I wake up dizzy, stumbling to the bathroom like a drunk man. At first, I blamed age. After 7 decades of life, the body starts breaking down. That's natural, isn't it? Yet deep in my gut, something whispers that this isn't just nature taking its course. The first time Anna brought Mark home for Sunday dinner, I knew something was off about him. He had the kind of polished smile that car salesmen wear during closing negotiations, bright, practiced, but completely empty behind the eyes. His handshake was firm but cold, his posture too perfect, his conversation smooth as honey. But honey can hide the most bitter poison. Throughout that first dinner, Mark kept steering our conversations toward money. My investments, my retirement savings, my life insurance policies, even the value of the house Anna grew up in. When I tried to talk about Anna's childhood or share stories about her mother, he'd somehow twist it back to financial planning. "You know, Papa," he'd say with that practiced smile, "it's smart to have your affairs in order. For Anna's security, of course. Have you updated your will recently?" I laughed it off then, telling myself he was just a young man thinking about providing for my daughter. Anna seemed happy, and that mattered more than my discomfort. But the way his eyes lit up when discussing inheritance made my skin crawl. There was hunger there, not for love or family, but for something much darker. Money has a way of revealing people's true nature, and Mark's nature was starting to show. That unease never left me, even after their wedding day 6 months later. Last Tuesday night, thirst pulled me from sleep around midnight. The Arizona summer heat was brutal, and even with the air conditioning running, my mouth felt like sandpaper. I shuffled toward the kitchen in my worn slippers, trying not to wake anyone in the house. The hallway was dark except for the small night light Anna had installed after I'd fallen last month, bumping my head on the bathroom doorframe. That's when I saw him. Mark stood at the medicine cabinet in the hall bathroom, his back to me, moving with the careful precision of someone who didn't want to be caught. The cabinet door was open, and his hands worked quickly, deliberately, like he'd done this before. When he heard my shuffling footsteps on the hardwood floor, he spun around like a startled cat, eyes wide and guilty. "Oh, Papa," he said, forcing that familiar smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Couldn't sleep either? I was just looking for some aspirin. This headache is absolutely killing me." But his hands were completely empty, and the aspirin bottle sat untouched on the middle shelf where it always lived. His eyes darted nervously between me and the cabinet like a thief caught mid-crime. I muttered something about needing water and watched him hurry back toward the master bedroom. My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't from my heart condition. The next morning, I opened my pill bottle with the same routine I'd followed for 3 years. But when the tablets tumbled into my palm, I froze completely. These weren't my medications. The pills that had sustained my life for so long were oval-shaped with a distinctive blue coating and the number 20 etched into each one. These imposters were round, completely white, and looked like cheap vitamins you'd buy at a gas station convenience store. My hands trembled as I held them up to the morning light streaming through my bedroom window. After taking the same medication daily for years, you memorize every detail: the size, the shape, the weight in your palm, even the slightly bitter taste when they dissolve on your tongue. These were definitely not my pills. The room spun around me as the pieces clicked together like a terrible puzzle. Mark's midnight visit to the medicine cabinet. His nervous, guilty behavior when I caught him. His obsession with my inheritance and life insurance policies. This wasn't paranoia or old age confusion clouding my judgment. This was attempted murder, disguised as caring for his elderly father-in-law. But I needed concrete proof. In a world where old men are often dismissed as confused or senile, my word alone wouldn't be enough to convince anyone. For the next several days, I became an actor in my own home, putting on the performance of my life. I pretended nothing had changed, swallowing the fake pills while Mark watched from across the breakfast table like a hawk studying its prey. I even made a show of seeming weaker, coughing more frequently, moving slower up the stairs, gripping the handrail tighter than usual. His satisfied smirks when I struggled to climb to the second floor made me physically sick. He would even offer to help, placing his arm around my shoulders with false concern. "Careful there, Papa," he'd say loud enough for Anna to hear. "We don't want you falling again." Anna noticed my decline and fretted constantly, her worry lines deepening each day. "Papa, maybe we should call Dr. Martinez," she suggested one evening after dinner. "Or switch to a different medication. Something stronger." Mark was quick to discourage her, playing the role of protective son-in-law perfectly. "Let's not overwhelm his system with changes," he said, placing what looked like a caring hand on my shoulder. "Sometimes less is more with elderly patients. We should let his body adjust naturally." The irony burned in my chest. He was slowly killing me while playing the concerned family member to perfection. But I had learned long ago that patience reveals truth better than confrontation ever could. Providence works in the most mysterious ways. 3 months ago, Mark had installed an expensive baby monitor system throughout the house, preparing for Anna's pregnancy and their first child. He bragged about it constantly to anyone who would listen. Military-grade security features, crystal-clear night vision, cloud backup storage, motion detection alerts. The camera positioned in the future nursery also captured a perfect view of the hallway, including the medicine cabinet where my pills were stored. Last Thursday evening, while Mark was at his law office working late, and Anna was taking her afternoon nap, I decided to figure out how to access the monitor's smartphone app. Anna had bought me a tablet for Christmas, insisting I needed to stay connected with technology. Most of the time it just frustrated me, but desperation makes you learn quickly. My arthritic fingers fumbled with the touchscreen as I downloaded the baby monitor app and logged into their account. The password was easy to guess. Anna's birthday followed by their wedding year. Mark wasn't very creative when it came to security, despite all his bragging about the system's features. I scrolled through archived footage from the past week, my heart pounding as I searched for Tuesday night around midnight. Then I found it, and my blood turned to ice water. The footage was more damning than I could have imagined. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Tuesday, 11:43 p.m. The video quality was crystal clear, with audio so sharp I could hear Mark's breathing and the soft click of the pill bottle opening. I watched my son-in-law systematically commit what could only be called attempted murder. First, he opened my prescription bottle and dumped all the real pills into a small plastic bag, counting them as they fell. Then he pulled an identical bottle from his pocket, one he'd obviously prepared in advance, and carefully transferred white tablets that looked nothing like my prescribed medication. His movements were practiced, methodical, like someone who'd rehearsed this routine multiple times. But it was his voice that froze my blood completely. As he worked, thinking he was completely alone and unobserved, he muttered under his breath, "Too expensive to keep alive. $300 a month for pills, plus doctor visits, plus everything else. Anna will get over it soon enough, and then we can finally afford that house in Scottsdale." I replayed that segment 5 times, each viewing making me angrier and more heartbroken. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a desperate mistake made in financial panic. This was cold-blooded calculation. He had reduced my life to a budget line item that needed eliminating for his convenience. The days that followed were the longest of my life. I carried that video file like a loaded weapon, hidden on a flash drive in my shirt pocket next to my heart. Every interaction with Mark became a carefully choreographed performance. When he asked about my health with fake concern, I complained about feeling weaker and more tired. When Anna worried about my declining symptoms, I let him comfort her with false reassurances about elderly bodies needing time to adjust. Meanwhile, I secretly drove to the pharmacy across town, not our usual one where Mark might see the records, and bought my real medication with cash. I hid the bottles in my sock drawer, buried beneath decades of mismatched socks Anna kept threatening to organize. Within just a few days of taking the proper pills, My strength began returning like sunrise after the longest night. The dizziness faded gradually. My breathing improved dramatically. The constant fog in my mind cleared away, revealing sharp thoughts and clear memories. It was like watching a man come back from the dead, which, in the most literal sense, I was. But I had to be extremely careful. If Mark noticed my improvement too quickly, he might become suspicious or try something more drastic. Maybe he'd increase the dosage of whatever poison he was feeding me, or find a more direct method to achieve his goal. Anna burst into the living room last Monday morning, practically glowing with the kind of excitement that only expectant mothers possess. "Papa, we've made such an exciting decision," she announced, holding Mark's hand while her other hand rested protectively on her growing belly. "We're going to have a big gender reveal party for the baby." Mark stood beside her, chest puffed with pride like a peacock displaying its feathers. "We're doing this right," he said, that familiar smugness creeping into his voice. "Professional decorations, a real photographer, catered food, and we're even renting one of those big LED screens for the reveal video. Everyone's going to remember this day forever." As they discussed guest lists and party favors with the enthusiasm of event planners, a plan began forming in my mind like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Mark wanted a memorable day with all their friends and family watching. He wanted everyone to see him as the perfect husband and father-to-be. I could certainly give him that kind of attention. "That sounds absolutely wonderful," I told them, forcing my weakest smile and adding a small cough for effect. "I can't wait to see everyone's reactions when they find out what you're having." Mark had absolutely no idea how accurate that statement would prove to be. The morning of the party arrived with perfect Arizona weather, sunny but not scorching, with a gentle breeze that made the decorations flutter like colorful butterflies. Anna had transformed the community center into something magical, with pink and blue balloons creating archways, elegant streamers draped from the ceiling, and table settings that looked like they belonged in a wedding magazine. Guests began arriving by noon, parking in the lot that quickly filled with cars I recognized and many I didn't. Family members I hadn't seen since Anna's wedding, her college friends who'd moved to different cities, Mark's colleagues from the law firm where he worked, neighbors from our street, and even some of Anna's former teachers who'd stayed in touch over the years. Everyone was dressed in their Sunday best, carrying wrapped gifts and wearing excited smiles. Children ran around in their party clothes, already hyper from the promise of cake and celebration. The photographer Mark had hired moved through the crowd like a professional, capturing candid moments and pose group shots. Mark worked the room like a seasoned politician, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, posing for pictures with his arm protectively around Anna's belly. He wore his most expensive suit, the charcoal gray one he'd bought for court appearances, and his most charming smile. To everyone watching, he looked like the absolute picture of a successful husband and soon-to-be father. But I sat in my wheelchair in the corner, taking everything in, knowing exactly what was hidden beneath that polished surface. At exactly 3 o'clock, Mark tapped his champagne glass with a silver fork, the crystal ring cutting through the cheerful conversations like a dinner bell. The room gradually quieted as all 67 pairs of eyes turned toward him. He looked magnificent standing there at the front of the room, confident, successful, beloved by everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying perfectly across the decorated space. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate with Anna and me. This little miracle," he placed his hand gently on Anna's rounded belly, "has already brought so much joy and anticipation to our lives. Today, we finally get to find out if we're welcoming a prince or a princess to our family." The crowd erupted in enthusiastic cheers and applause. Anna beamed beside him, radiant with the glow that only pregnant women possess. Children in the audience bounced on their toes with excitement, while adults held up phones and cameras to capture the moment. The photographer crouched near the front, getting the perfect angle. So without any further delay, Mark announced with a theatrical gesture toward the large LED screen that dominated one wall. "Let's find out what we're having." He pressed a button on the remote control. The lights dimmed dramatically. Everyone held their collective breath in anticipation. The screen flickered to life, and every person in that room expected to see either pink or blue. Instead, they saw something that would haunt their memories forever. The video was horrifyingly clear on the giant screen. There was Mark, captured in perfect high definition by his own state-of-the-art security system. The timestamp glowed in the bottom corner. Tuesday, 11:43 p.m. Every detail was visible under the hallway's night lighting. His careful, practiced movements, his furtive glances to make sure he was alone, his methodical replacement of my life-saving medication with worthless substitutes. The room's premium sound system amplified every sound with perfect clarity. The soft rattle of pills being poured out, the quiet snap of the bottle cap being removed. And then, most damning of all, came his voice, muttering what he thought were private thoughts. Too expensive to keep alive. $300 a month for pills, plus doctor visits, plus everything else. Anna will get over it soon enough, and then we can finally afford that house in Scottsdale. The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. 67 people frozen in complete shock, staring at the screen in disbelief. You could have heard a pin drop in that massive room. Even the children stopped fidgeting, sensing that something terrible and adult had just happened, though they couldn't understand what. On screen, Mark continued his deadly work, completely unaware that every movement was being recorded in high definition. The camera captured it all. The way he counted the fake pills to match the original quantity, the satisfied nod when he finished his work, the casual disposal of my real medication like it was nothing more than expired vitamins. The real Mark, standing frozen at the front of the room, watched his own premeditated crime play out in front of every person he'd ever wanted to impress. Anna's champagne glass slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering on the polished floor like her entire world had just done. The sound of breaking crystal seemed to break the spell of silence, and suddenly everyone was moving and talking at once. Her face went white as fresh snow, one hand flying to cover her mouth in horror, while the other instinctively moved to protect her unborn child. "Oh my God," she whispered, then louder, her voice cracking with betrayal and disbelief. "Oh my God, Mark, what is this? What did you do?" The crowd began to stir like a disturbed beehive. Horrified whispers rippled through the room faster than wildfire. Mothers instinctively pulled their children closer, shielding them from something they couldn't fully understand but knew was deeply wrong. Mark's colleagues from the law firm exchanged shocked glances, already calculating the professional implications. His own parents, who had driven 3 hours from Tucson to attend this celebration, stared at their son like he was a complete stranger. "This can't be real," someone said from the back of the room, their voice shaky with disbelief. "This has to be some kind of sick joke. Or fake. It has to be fake." But the evidence playing on the movie theater-sized screen was undeniably authentic. The timestamp was continuous, the video quality consistent, the audio clear and unedited. Mark had been caught red-handed by his own security system, and now his crime was being broadcast for everyone he'd ever known to witness. His mouth opened and closed repeatedly like a fish gasping for air, but no sounds came out. My wheelchair creaked as I pushed myself up with more strength than I'd shown in weeks. The proper medication had been working its magic, restoring my energy just in time for this moment of reckoning. Every single eye in that room turned to watch me as I walked slowly but steadily toward the microphone at the front. "This man," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the speakers with more power than it had possessed in months, "is my son-in-law, the father of my grandchild, the person my daughter trusted to protect and provide for their family, the man she believed would love and honor her for the rest of their lives." The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Anna continued sobbing quietly in her chair while Mark stood. A collective gasp rose from the crowd like steam from hot pavement. Someone in the back shouted, "Call the police," while others were already pulling out their phones, some to call for help and others to record everything that was happening. "But God has a sense of justice and irony," I said, looking directly into Mark's terrified eyes. The same baby monitor he installed to protect his unborn child became the digital witness to his crime against that child's grandfather. Mark finally found his voice, but it came out cracked and desperate, nothing like his usual confident courtroom tone. This has to be edited somehow. Digital manipulation. Papa's been confused lately, everyone knows that. His medications affect his judgment. This video can't possibly be real." He was grasping at straws, and everyone in the room could see the desperation written across his face. But I had anticipated this exact accusation and prepared accordingly. Look carefully at the bottom right corner of the screen, I said calmly, using the remote to rewind the video to the beginning. There it was, clear as day, the Baby Monitor Company's official watermark, automatically embedded in every single recording. The timestamp ran continuously with no gaps, jumps, or inconsistencies that would indicate digital editing. The video quality remained perfectly consistent throughout, with no telltale signs of manipulation that even amateur viewers could detect. Mark insisted on buying the most expensive monitor system available. I explained to the stunned crowd, my voice growing stronger with each word. Military-grade security, he called it. Tamper-proof recordings with blockchain verification technology. He was so proud of those features, bragging about them to everyone who would listen. The irony was absolutely perfect, and everyone in that room could see it clearly. His own technology. The system he'd researched, purchased, installed, and boasted about had betrayed him completely. The security measures he'd insisted on paying extra for, the cloud backup he'd specifically requested, the high-definition clarity he'd demanded, it had all worked exactly as advertised. And it had recorded every single second of his attempt to murder me. Anna doubled over in her chair, sobbing so hard her entire body shook with the force of her grief. The sound was heartbreaking, raw, primal anguish mixed with betrayal and horror. It was the cry of a woman whose entire world had just collapsed in the span of 60 seconds. Her friends rushed to comfort her, but she pushed them away, staring at Mark with eyes full of disgust and disbelief. "You tried to kill my father," she whispered through her tears, then screamed it loud enough for everyone to hear. "You tried to kill my father while I was carrying your baby." The unborn child inside her seemed to sense the emotional trauma, kicking frantically against her ribs as if trying to escape the chaos. Anna clutched her belly protectively, tears streaming down her face as the full reality hit her. She had come within weeks, maybe days, of losing me forever. Her child had almost been born into a world without a grandfather, never knowing that greed and impatience had stolen him away. "Anna, please, you have to let me explain," Mark started, reaching toward her with shaking hands. "Explain what?" she interrupted, her voice cracking with rage and pain. "Explain how you decided my father was too expensive to keep alive? Explain how you were slowly poisoning the man who raised me while I worried about his health every single day? Explain how you looked me in the eye every morning knowing you were trying to murder my dad." The party guests watched this family tragedy unfold like witnesses to a horrible car accident, horrified but unable to look away. Some were already heading for the exits, wanting no part of whatever legal consequences were about to follow. Mark's parents, William and Bethany, had been standing proudly near the gift table when the video started playing, beaming with grandparental anticipation. They'd driven down from Phoenix specifically for this celebration, bringing expensive gifts wrapped in silver paper and wearing their proudest smiles for their successful son's big day. Now they looked like they'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Bethany was crying quietly into her lace handkerchief, the one she'd carried at her own son's wedding. William's face had gone stone cold, his jaw clenched with the kind of anger that comes from deep disappointment and shame. They'd raised Mark, shaped his values through childhood, taught him the difference between right and wrong during countless dinner table conversations. They'd paid for his education, supported his career, bragged about his success to their friends. And this is what their son had become, a man willing to commit murder for money. "How could you do this?" Bethany whispered, approaching her son with unsteady steps. "How could you try to hurt this sweet old man who welcomed you into his family? What kind of monster have you become?" William was even more direct, his voice heavy with finality and disappointment. "You're no son of mine anymore," he said, each word falling like a hammer blow. "I don't know what kind of creature you've turned into, but you're not the boy we raised. We taught you better than this." Mark reached desperately toward his parents, panic clear on his face. "Mom, Dad, please. You don't understand the financial pressure we've been under. Anna's medical bills, the new house payments, the baby coming. So you decided murder was the solution?" William snapped. "That was your answer to money problems?" By Monday morning, the video had gone viral across every social media platform imaginable. Someone at the party, I later learned it was Anna's college friend Jessica, had live-streamed the entire confrontation on Facebook and now millions of people worldwide knew exactly what kind of man Mark really was. The footage had been shared, reposted, and discussed endlessly across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. The law firm where Mark worked as a junior partner called an emergency meeting first thing Monday morning. His phone rang at 7:30 a.m., waking both him and Anna from what I'm sure was a sleepless night. "We're suspending you immediately pending a full investigation," his boss, senior partner Richardson, told him over the phone. This kind of publicity, attempted murder charges, viral social media coverage. We simply cannot have our clients thinking we employ people who try to murder their in-laws for inheritance money. Our reputation is everything in this business. His colleagues avoided him completely in the parking lot, whispering behind his back as he cleaned out his desk. The networking contacts he'd spent years cultivating suddenly had no time for his calls. Professional reputation, once damaged in the legal community, spreads through the local bar association like wildfire. Mark tried desperately to explain it away as a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion, but the video evidence was simply too strong, too clear, too damning. Within days, job interviews were being canceled, client referrals were being withdrawn, and his legal career was essentially over before it had really begun. Wednesday afternoon brought two serious-looking police officers to our front door. Detective Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with kind but sharp eyes, and Officer Kim, a younger man who took detailed notes of everything we said. They'd been assigned to investigate what they formally termed potential elder abuse and attempted poisoning with intent to cause bodily harm. "We've reviewed the viral video evidence multiple times," Detective Rodriguez explained, settling into our living room with her notepad and recording device. "We'd like to take your complete statement, Mr. Torres, and collect any physical evidence you might have preserved." I handed them the flash drive containing the original footage directly from the baby monitor's cloud storage, plus the fake pills I'd carefully saved from my original bottle. Mark sat across from us with his expensive lawyer beside him, looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen him. "My client maintains his complete innocence in this matter," the lawyer said in that practiced tone all attorneys use. "This appears to be a tragic misunderstanding that's been blown completely out of proportion by social media attention and family dynamics." Detective Rodriguez wasn't buying any of it. She'd obviously seen plenty of elder abuse cases before. "Sir, we have high-definition video evidence of your client deliberately replacing prescribed medication with unidentified substances while clearly stating his intent to hasten the victim's death. Under Arizona law, that constitutes attempted murder in the first degree." The remaining color drained completely from Mark's face as the legal reality finally hit him. "The prosecution will want to review your complete medical records," Detective Rodriguez explained to me privately while Mark conferred with his lawyer in hushed, urgent tones. "We'll need to fully document the health impact of having your prescribed medication systematically replaced. Blood tests, cardiac evaluations, medication level screenings, everything." I nodded, finally understanding the complete scope of what Mark had tried to accomplish. "How long would it have taken?" I asked the question I'd been afraid to voice. "For someone with your specific cardiac condition? Missing proper heart medication for 3 consecutive weeks could have been fatal at any point. You're extremely fortunate you discovered the switch when you did and were able to obtain replacement medication quickly. Fortunate wasn't the word I would have chosen. Providence, maybe. Divine intervention, certainly. Justice finding a way to reveal itself, absolutely. But not mere luck." Detective Rodriguez continued taking detailed notes as I walked her through every aspect of the ordeal, my growing suspicions about Mark's behavior, the discovery of the wrong pills, the gradual decline in my health until I started taking proper medication again, the baby monitor footage that captured everything. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision or a single lapse in judgment, she concluded after hearing the full story. This was planned, deliberate, and sustained over multiple weeks. The district attorney will definitely pursue serious charges. Mark's lawyer requested a private conference with his client. Through the thin walls of our house, I could hear urgent whispered conversations about plea bargains and reduced sentences. The court of public opinion moved much faster than the legal system ever could. Within a single week, Mark had become a social media villain of the worst kind, His photo shared across every platform with captions like "evil son-in-law," "elder abuse monster," and "greedy killer exposed." The hashtag #BabyMonitorJustice was trending nationally. His Facebook page, once carefully curated to show his professional success, was flooded with thousands of angry comments from complete strangers. His LinkedIn profile was filled with scathing reviews calling him a disgrace to the legal profession. Even his high school reunion committee removed him from their contact list, not wanting their organization associated with someone facing attempted murder charges. Local news stations across Arizona picked up the story, running evening segments about elder abuse awareness and the importance of monitoring elderly relatives' medications. Mark's photo appeared on television screens throughout the Phoenix metropolitan area, usually next to headlines about shocking family betrayal and inheritance-motivated attempted murder. The man who'd once networked so carefully and strategically, building his reputation one handshake and business card at a time, watched it all crumble in real time. Social media had created his public shame, and social media would preserve it forever in the digital archives. Even his law school alumni magazine ran a story about the case, using it as a cautionary tale about ethics and character. His professors probably never imagined one of their graduates would become famous for trying to murder his wife's father. Anna filed for legal separation the following Monday morning, her decision swift and final. I watched from the kitchen window as she methodically packed her belongings, moving slowly due to her pregnancy, but with the determined purpose of a woman who'd made up her mind completely. Mark followed her around the house like a lost puppy, pleading desperately and making promises he should have made years ago. "I can change, Anna. I swear I can change," he kept repeating like a broken record. This was just a terrible mistake, a moment of incredibly poor judgment. Think about our child. They need their father in their life. Anna turned on him with a fury I'd never seen before, her eyes blazing with protective maternal instinct. "They need a father who isn't a murderer. You tried to kill my dad while I was carrying your baby. How am I supposed to trust you with anything ever again? How do I know you won't decide we're too expensive to keep alive someday?" She loaded her car with essentials and drove straight to our house, her childhood home, where love existed without conditions, calculations, or hidden agendas. That evening, we sat together on the front porch watching the desert sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, her hand resting protectively on her belly while I took my real medication for the first time without fear. "I'm so sorry, Papa," she whispered, tears still flowing down her cheeks. "I should have seen what he was. I should have protected you. But evil is patient and cunning, and it wears the faces we trust most. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal." Within just a few days of returning to my proper medication regimen, my body began healing itself with remarkable speed. The constant dizziness that had plagued me for weeks faded away completely. My breathing became easier and deeper, no longer labored with each step up the stairs. My hands stopped their persistent shaking, and healthy color returned to my pale cheeks for the first time in a month. Anna noticed the dramatic change immediately. "Papa, you look so much better," she said, relief evident in every word. "I was so scared we were losing you. I thought your heart condition was getting worse." "You almost did lose me," I replied, showing her the bottle of fake pills I'd kept as evidence. But not to old age or heart disease, to greed and impatience. We established a comfortable new routine together. Morning walks around the neighborhood where I'd raised her, shared meals at the kitchen table where she'd done homework as a child, evening conversations about everything except Mark and his betrayal. Anna's pregnancy progressed beautifully, and for the first time in months, I looked forward with excitement to meeting my grandchild. The doctors confirmed what I already knew in my heart. My cardiac condition was stable, my mind was completely clear, and with proper medication, I could expect many more years of active life. Years that Mark had tried to steal from me and from the grandchild I'd never met. But justice has a way of preserving what matters most while punishing those who threaten it. 6 months later, on a beautiful spring morning, Anna gave birth to a healthy baby girl weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces. We named her Sophia, after Anna's grandmother who'd passed away when Anna was just 10 years old. I held her tiny, perfect form in my arms for the first time, counting her delicate fingers and toes, marveling at the absolute miracle of new life beginning. She'll never have to wonder if her grandfather loved her, Anna said softly, watching me rock the baby with the gentleness that only grandparents possess. As I looked down at Sophia's peaceful face, her eyes closed in perfect trust, I thought about how terrifyingly close we'd both come to never meeting each other. If Mark's evil plan had succeeded, this beautiful child would have grown up hearing stories about a grandfather she'd never known, never understanding that greed and impatience had stolen him away before she could even be born. But she was here now, healthy and perfect, and I was here too, alive and strong, and ready to be part of her life. This tiny girl would know her grandfather's voice, feel his arms around her during bedtime stories, and learn the family history that connects one generation to the next. Mark had tried to erase me from the future, to remove me like an unwanted expense from their family budget. Instead, his greed had only succeeded in erasing himself from our lives completely. Sophia stirred in my arms, opening her dark eyes that looked so much like Anna's, and I knew that love had triumphed over evil in the most fundamental way possible. That night, after Anna and baby Sophia had fallen asleep upstairs, I sat alone in my living room with my evening medication and a cup of chamomile tea. The house was peaceful except for the occasional soft sounds of the baby stirring in her crib, and I found myself reflecting on how quickly and dramatically life can change. Just 4 months ago, I was dying slowly, being systematically poisoned by someone I'd welcomed into my family with open arms and complete trust. Tonight, I was stronger than I'd been in years, surrounded by people who genuinely loved me, holding my granddaughter who would carry my stories and values into the future. Mark was facing trial for attempted murder, his career destroyed beyond repair, his marriage ended, his reputation in ruins throughout Arizona's legal community. The baby monitor he'd installed to protect his family had become the primary instrument of his downfall. There's a poetry to that kind of justice. I thought about evil and how it hides behind familiar smiles, how it creeps into our homes wearing the faces of people we trust. But I also thought about truth, and how it has a way of revealing itself when we need it most. Evil can hide in smiles, I whispered to the empty room, but it cannot hide forever. And I meant every word.